Hi and welcome to UFOs Australia. My name's Tim Grover. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm really excited to introduce today's guest with you. He's an international best-selling author. He's an international speaker, and he's probably one of the most famous, if not the famous, contactee experiences in the world. It's with great pleasure and excitement that I introduce today Peter Maxwell Slattery. Peter, how are you today?
Good, mate. Yourself? Thank you for having
Yeah,
me on.
thank you so much for agreeing to join me today. So yeah, I'm just really excited to have you here. Again, I've been following a lot of what you've been doing over the past few years, and yeah, just really keen to have a chat with you, and yeah, just really excited to find out more. But so one of the things that's really apparent, I guess, with what you do is there's a real point of difference between the fact that a lot of your sightings tend to be during the day, and that there is huge amounts of documentation that you have on video. So how did this all happen for you?
It's just been something that's been with me a lot of my life. So I didn't see my first UFO till I was 12, and that was in a place called Albury Wodonga, actually in a suburb called Lavington. And that was a massive object, 3 times the size of a football field, just going in front of a hill called Red Light Hill. And it looked like a disc, but it looked like it was a matte grey. So it looks like a weight on the end of a bar, but if you put it sideways, and it was like a matte dark grey, and that just it cut in front of the hill and went until out of view. I still to this day don't know if anyone else saw it, which just blows me away because this thing was huge. Again, it was absolutely massive. But my experiences started around 7 through telepathy, through a voice that was in my head, a female. And about a year after that, I started to see these white beings that looked like greys, but they were white. And so there would be visitations from them on and off for a period of from 8 up until 12 years old. And then from there, I had that sighting, and then high strangeness, paranormal activity, and UFO sightings seemed to be just a not a constant occurrence, but it was something that regularly happened every now and then. And it wasn't up until 2010 when I really started seeing all this stuff again with people that were around me that I started to capture this stuff on camera. That eventually got on the news. It got on prime news, the evening news. That was mainly me. I don't know how that all happened, but they came to me and I just wanted to know what was happening, because I even contacted Australian Air Services that told me from the footage there was nothing around at that time, because I said, well, I'm getting stuff on camera and you're telling me there's nothing in the area of Albury at that time in that location. And these were down low, and they were even interacting with me when I was pointing at them. They'll do crazy maneuvers and shoot off at lightning speed. So from that point on, I kept the camera on me, and I still do today. And a lot of the footage that I'm capturing now is in 4K, so very good quality. And a lot of this stuff does happen during the day for me, but it's more of an awareness to walk out and these crafts are there. But I've had physical contact and interactions for years now, and that's continuing to this day.
So with the craft, are you I guess actively calling them and saying, hey, I'm here, let's make contact, or are you sort of more getting a feeling to say, oh, hang on, I need to go out and I might see something?
Like, I'll call them when it's in a group, but it's not calling it. It's more like inviting a friend. Either they're available to come and have a coffee or they're not. It's sort of like that. Um, every single Skywatch event that I've held now, the people that have witnessed these events are in the thousands around the world, because I've held them around the world. And as a group, as a collective consciousness, we invite them if it's safe to do so, if they want to connect. And there is a lot more activity. We get more on the ground than we do in the skies. We can sense the energies. We can see the beings in apparition form, things of that nature. So when I'm by myself, sometimes I'll sort of put out a thought, but usually, and this has happened a lot of times, that I'll be in a house somewhere and I've got a lot of witnesses to this. I'll say, go outside, they're here right now, and we'll walk out. And we've been sitting inside for sometimes an hour, 2, 3 hours. And we walk out, and directly above me, the craft will be just sitting there in broad daylight. So it's what I call thought transfer. And this is the thing, that when it started out, I was wondering, how come every time I think there's a UFO outside and I go outside, it's there? When the physical interaction started, a being called Shiji told me, we're putting that thought in your consciousness. You think that you're thinking that, but that's the way that we're communicating with you at this time due to where you're at and what's easier for us as well. And so when you recognize your thoughts, there is guidance, there is assistance coming through. Whether we take that or not is completely up to us. It took a bit of training to understand, all right, this is contact happening right now. And the byproduct was walking out with witnesses and getting it on camera and them seeing it and going, all right, how did you know that? And it's been replicated. I don't know how many times. I've got 3,500 videos and photos, over probably nearly 4,000 now. And a majority I haven't got online. I'm looking at putting up a compilation, maybe later next year, of 10 years worth of evidence that I've captured. And I've got bangs on camera and video footage as well. And there's some documentaries coming out soon featuring my stuff as well that hasn't been seen yet before as well. So there's a lot to what's happening, and it's continuing.
Yeah, so that must be, so understanding what's your thought and what's their thought, is there any sort of clues or is there any technique to sort of understand which is which?
Well, it's the energy that comes. It's almost like how you get goosebumps, but it's different. There is a sensation that goes through you. Sometimes I'll have a cool sensation on the front of my head, or my whole body will go cold. Sometimes, depending on the race or the beam, my whole body will start to rush. Each race or each entity as well has a different sensation. What happens, the science behind it, from my understanding, that no one else has told me, but that I've come up with from years of experiencing this, is that what's happening is, even if we can't perceive them with our 5 sense reality, because we can only see a fraction of 0.005% of physical matter, their auric field is overlapping our auric field, and that sensation is the physical byproduct. They can bilocate their consciousness to communicate. They can project the thought, and that's how the communication happens. It goes from their field to mine, down through the crown chakra, through the right side of the brain to the left, and I'm left, in my English, point form of information. Now, it wasn't always that way. A lot of the interactions with Shiji came with the female tone, and the only way I can describe it is it's like you put your chin on an acoustic guitar when you play it. That vibration going through your skull, but it was coming from inside my head. And until I was ready, I guess through teachings and understanding of what was going on to me, that's when that sort of died down, and I met them halfway, so to speak, through projecting thoughts back, because it's all through thought. That even the crafts, they operate like that.
So how did you learn that? Was that through meditation, or so what gave you the sense to be able to do that?
There was a 3.5 year period where I was working 4 days a week at an accountancy firm, and I had other jobs, but I was doing 8 to 12 hours remote viewing and meditation every day. That's all I did.
Oh, wow.
Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the whole week. That's all I did for 3.5 years. And that exponentially jumped me forward. I think because I was doing remote viewing and meditation techniques at the same time, I'll do remote viewing for part of the day, go to meditation, and just mix it up. And I've done a lot of meditation retreats, self-mastery workshops years ago, and now I'm doing them myself, assisting people through the knowledge that I've obtained through these contacts and the material that I've shared.
Wow, that's incredible. Now, and I think I'm right in saying, so Shiji is your Palladian contact?
But yeah, Shiji's a Pleiadian. It's a lot to go into to the information. There's 3 books that I've shared called the Book of Shiji, the Book of Shiji 2 and 3, and they're all bestsellers. And there's a lot of material to go through there, and it's almost like I have to go through it, because you're not going to get certain parts of it if you don't get the full picture, because there's a shaping and evolution that happens to your consciousness when understanding the material. And a lot of people actually know it. They don't know how they know the material, but I believe that in between lives, we know it all. And that's what's coming through, is a remembrance of that knowledge that they've got out of the body computer. So yeah, the interactions have been going on for years. It really started, the physical interaction started at the start of 2012, but I later found out she was the one that was speaking to me at the age of 7. So she was the one sending telepathy to me back then, and I didn't connect the dots until a few years ago with that. It's really like looking back, assessing things, going, damn, that's what was going on.
And did I see that you've actually got footage of her?
Yeah, there's been photos taken, not just of her, but of many other beings as well, and even video. That's all these photos too have been analysed by Jason Gleaves, who's ex-UK Air Force Aerospace, and he's an image analysis specialist. A lot of it, Jaime Maussan's group, Terza Millennia, have looked at Japanese television, television in Australia, and documentary crews. They've looked at the metadata, they've looked at the originals, and they've come to their own conclusions, which is all the same from each source, that these are genuine photos.
That's incredible. So you got all of these people basically checking, and I think I also heard, or sort of probably heard you say, that you quite often will film your camera filming, UFOs, or just so you can go back and say, this is that it's genuine, that you've got this here showing it.
Yeah, so I'll even have the camera panned up with the viewfinder looking at me filming the craft in the sky, and I'll actually film the camera, and then I'll even shift it up and film the craft myself from a second camera. There's been times I used to even get 5 cameras out and film it with each 5, and I'd have a crowd, just friends and family there, and I'd just film one after the same craft on 5 different cameras.
Do you find you get pushback from people about your footage, or are most people sort of quite open to that nowadays?
No, you get a lot of negative things said from other UFO groups, and that's fine. That is what it is. Some people just can't comprehend it. They look at it and go, well, I just don't know what that is, but it's too hard for them to go that far-fetched. And I don't want people to believe me. I don't care, because that's the problem that's got the society where it is now. From the teachings and things that I know, is that we're in a blind belief system. Whether it's religion or politicians or what people tell us, we blindly believe it. We don't do the research and investigation ourselves. And unless you do that, people can say what they want, but they've got no valid points unless they've done so. And I see that there's more problems with scientific community and the UFO community than there is with any other community. Even the paranormal community, we could say the same, because you've got scientists, for example, who take out UFOs. They've worked on a theory, and then something comes along to disprove their theory, and they're not going to lose that theory because that's my theory. And then you've got ufologists and the communities within ufology that they've got their perception, which is quite fine. I've got mine. But when it's pushed onto other people, there's another point of view. They can't seem to go outside of that. There's 100 different theories on Roswell, and new things may come to light, 20, 30 years after the fact, going back in the day when the story was reported. But you had ufologists standing to their death on certain points of view, and they wouldn't buckle, even if there was contradicting evidence. And I think true skeptics, which I don't have a problem with skeptics, they look at both sides of the argument and come to a logical conclusion based on the evidence. But we don't have a lot of that. We have people that will do personal attacks and say whatever they want. No, that's okay, but it's just only establishing their character, not mine. And I never respond to it, because I've been shot at over this stuff. I have black helicopters flying over me. I've had surveillance. You name it, it's happened. And I've got more off-world enemies than I do here. If we could all come together and have unity and accept each other's differences, whether in this community or whether as a community as a whole over the planet, we could really move mountains overnight, I believe.
That's it. And my personal opinion is the UFO, I guess interest doesn't have to be just one certain type. I mean, I think the fact that we're talking about UFOs, and, I'm sure there's probably hundreds of different, species out there. There's no reason why it has to be one way. It can be interdimensionally. It can be interplanetary. Maybe they are inside the Earth. Who knows? I don't know if you can hear that thunder coming out.
Thunder.
I've got some big thunder coming out here.
Yeah. Do you need rain where you are? It's probably dry where you are too.
Yeah, it's a little bit dry. Yeah, we probably do need some rain. So good on you, buddy. Yeah, we're all good.
No, you're exactly that statement, because that's what happened to me. Was the more I experienced this phenomenon, then started to interact with the beings, it got a lot more complex, but made more sense as it went along, with them being in other realms or other dimensions or densities, and the way that they travel in the advanced crafts, or even more physical types of crafts. And, this does bleed over into what I'm wanting to do, is cross the paranormal side of things with the UFO side of things, because even years ago when I was doing investigations, I found that some people, they were experiencing paranormal activity, but because they watched Ghost Hunters or something, they thought it was of that nature, and it could have been a residual or intelligent haunting. But I started to look at things and go, wait, hang on, this may be interactions with interdimensional beings from elsewhere. And then other times when they thought it was alien abduction, it seemed to be that they were in a haunted location with intelligent activity. And so this is where all aspects really need to be looked at to come to some truth, because depending on the view of your lens looking at this reality, that's going to taint the outcome of your findings or what you know. And that's where I try to drop that as much as I can, because the more that I know, the more I realize I don't know anything at all except just what I know so far, because it opens up how complex what is going on really is, which is why I think the UFO community's been at a standstill since Hynek and Jacques Vallée, because we still see the same theories and great work that they've done, not knocking them or a lot of other researchers either. But what I'm saying is what progress has been made. And I think listening to, don't listen to me, but what I'm saying is listen to experiences in general, and you'll start to see overlapping commonalities that will start to point in certain directions that need to be looked at.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, and I think this subject can be quite upsetting for people because it doesn't really sit within their worldview, and that's why for me, I'm quite happy to listen to what everyone's got to say. I don't think it's any one thing. I think it's a multitude of lots of different things, and I think more often than, in more recent times, I think the focus has actually changed a fair bit now to the spiritual aspect, and I think that comes into, is it ESETI and a lot of, hence why you mentioned about the meditation and the remote viewing. I mean, even remote viewing, I'm sure there's probably a lot of people out there that might not necessarily know what that is. So maybe could you explain maybe what it is and how that's helped you with what you do as an experiencer?
Yeah, so going back to the inception of it, I can't remember the exact names, but I think there was there was Ingo Swan, and a team of remote viewers. He was more the psychic, but there was a military team, and it was Project Stargate. And how it actually come into being was, how they got the funding was they went to the Pentagon and they said, we're not going to tell you what we want the funding for, but we're going to get you to do something. And so, well, this is the way I've heard the story anyway. And so they had different people from different factions of the Pentagon sit down, and they gave them a piece of paper, and they had an envelope with an object in it of an image with an arrow to it, and they put 2 sets of 4-digit numbers on it, which is a target number. Now, that is almost like giving an object in the universe of the wireless internet a number, which is the 2 sets of 4 digits. And so all you've got is an envelope with the 2 sets of 4 digits that is on that object on the outside of the envelope, and all anybody gets is those 2 sets of 4-digit numbers. And it's basically, what's the first thing that you taste, smell, what dimensions do you perceive? It's basically using your 5 sense reality, and you start to draw out a picture and get colors and smells and textures, and you write it down. For example, my dad would get objects for me, and I'd go around every week or so, and I would get the target numbers and draw out a kettle with the red light on it and a black handle, and I'd say that the object is metallic. I'd open the envelope, and from a catalogue, there's the exact kettle that I just drew out, and I didn't even see it. So it's using extra sensory perception of basically what's happened is you're giving that number, you're giving those numbers to that object, and that classifies it as a code in consciousness to that object. The person who gets the numbers, they write down the numbers, and they basically write down and draw out exactly what comes to mind. And then usually with a lot of people, there's about 70% accuracy. And so that turned into Project Stargate, because there was apparently a good result from the people in the Pentagon that did what they did. And it was the first time they ever done it. They're not psychic or anything, but I think we all are. And what happened then after that was they were using it for Soviet bases, intel of what could be in Soviet bases. You got people like Joseph Montel, who's got the Legion of Merit Award. There's a bit of lightning going on there. Oh, thunder is.
Dear, can you hear this?
I can hear it a little bit. I can hear you over it when you talk, but I can hear it just a little bit.
We haven't had weather like this in months and months and months.
Yeah. So that's just a basic wrap up of how that works. But over time, I come to understand concepts of how you can use that for interaction with these beings, because that's the plane, that consciousness state is where we're all tapped into the same field. And so, you got places like ESETI Ranch in America. I've got ESETI Australia here, and I hold events and workshops. And that's what we do. We do inner sensitivity exercises and remote viewing and different practices, energy work, and things that attune you to these energies more and more and amplify it and make you more sensitive. So I guess you can tap in more. And so you've seen, Dr. Greer with C. SETI, he does a similar thing with his events. And there's people all around the world doing these things for events and for practices and workshops and introducing people to this conscious reality, I guess, of this phenomena. And everyone's getting results worldwide. So it's been happening for years, way before I was on the scene. But it's the way that I've got into this as well through my own interactions was working out, right, all this is connected. And when you do the self-mastery work, you meet it halfway.
Yeah. And when you think about it, talking, telepathy, extrasensory communication, it's not that far off the scale. And the reason I say that, even now, they're talking about communication using brainwaves. And I think there was an experiment where one person moved an electronic hand in a different country, and that was just using their brainwaves. So the reality is, we're actually sort of catching up with this, but more in a scientific way rather than a spiritual way. So it's quite interesting to see where we're going with this.
Definitely. I think we need that balance of both. And
yeah,
that's the hard thing, is having a balance of both, because these beings that I mainly interact with, I've been on crafts and physical type, they're physical in some way. But a majority of it, some of the crafts are structured from light. Some of these beings are just in their Merkaba. They're just in their own energy field. And like I said before, they can just break down to an electron, bang somewhere else and appear. So this is surpassing technology. They don't need technology at that level, but they've used it to assist them. But it's keeping heart-centered and using that technology for positive purposes, where their consciousness has developed and they've obtained some form of enlightenment on the path, their own practices, and having a balance with spirituality and technology. Or else we could pretty much end up with the same thing with what happened with Atlantis and Lemuria, which is very controversial, but we've seen, we've got ancient sites all around the world that prove they were here way before what we think we know, and they've gone somewhere. I think some have ascended and some have perished in wars.
I guess the history of this, because common knowledge says we're 2,000 years old or whatever it is, which, I've got to be honest, I don't really think that. But and one thing I guess with the history is the Gosford glyphs. And I think you might have done a bit of research up there, and that's only probably 40 minutes from where I live. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, you've got to go and check it out. So I've been there a couple of times, and I've talked to Stephen and Evan Strong from Forgotten Origin. So I recommend everyone go and check their work on this, because this really does change the history of humanity. So from what I know is that there's one wall that's Egyptian with Egyptian hieroglyphs. There is a fake Anubis that's been put on there to discredit it, that was done after all the other glyphs. So people go there and think that's the original. That wasn't originally there. Now, the glyphs go into a story of two pharaohs that came over, and they were trying to take knowledge from the Aboriginals. And it was in these stones and these rocks, which are multidimensional hard drives. It's sort of complicated to explain that, but that's the way it is. I'll leave it at that to sort of leave it simplified. So these guys were coming to Australia for a long time, the Egyptians getting their ancient knowledge, mystery school teachings from there. And these two pharaohs, when they came, they tried to take it. And the Aboriginals said, or the original people said, you can take it, but you won't get away with it. One was bitten by a snake at that site, and I've held his kneecap, and his body's still not there, but I've held the pharaoh's kneecap. And the other one got shipwrecked on the ocean there. Now, the other wall, from what I remember, was bought from 100 kilometers away. They can't explain it. This whole thing is actually an ancient structure. It's got a roof, everything. Very, very amazing how this thing was built. Now, the story on that wall is that it's a Pleiadian wall, and it talks about beings coming from the Pleiades, and they manipulated the Denisovian, which was here at that time, to create the Aboriginal, the original person, and to incarnate and have the Earth human experience through that being. And so what's even trippier to put on this is that there's been evidence found that in Tutankhamun's tomb in Egypt, there's a boomerang there with a symbol on it from the tribe in Ballarat, Australia, and there's even gold in there.
Ballarat.
And there's even gold in there that comes from Ballarat. And I talked to the Strongs about this, and they were saying something to me from what I remember, that there are scientific devices that I guess they've catalogued where gold is on certain places of the planet, and it gives off a frequency. So I'm not talking about 9 carat gold or 18 carat, anything like that. You can have the same carats, but there's something that you can tell where it's from. And some of the gold in Tutankhamun's tomb comes from Ballarat.
Wow.
So, even saying that, it puts a lot of our history on it flips it upside down from what people think they know. And I believe that's going back a very long time, that facility as well. So that we've got a lot more sites around here than that. There's a lot that can't be talked about at this time. Some of it's protecting it, some of it's because people go and vandalize it. But there is more than the Gosford glyphs around, that's for sure.
Oh, any around Newcastle?
I can't really say, not around the Newcastle area, but.
All right, fair enough. All right, I'll let you off with that one. But so with I guess with regards to obviously the contact, UFOs, alien entities. What do you think the purpose is, or the agenda? What do you think? What are they trying to get out of it? Do you think, and how do you think that will impact humanity?
Well, what it comes down to is what I personally term Operation Starseed. And see, when you talk to people that are new to their experiences, like they're having experiences and just waking up, you talk to that person 10, 15, 20 years down the track, they're all saying that they're not from here, that they've been in other places, had lives in other places. They all have the same story, that they're like a black sheep, they've never fit in, that things could be done better here on Earth, that this is not right how we treat each other. That you are more than just a body, that you're a multidimensional being having a human experience, and that there is different agendas happening at this time. Some I call the lower light, which could be archonic reptilian nature in certain types of greys. The other side is what I call the star nations, that are beyond just our galaxy and beyond going into other dimensions, that there is a war going on. There is a thought war going on, and you got one side of the lower light that's doing what they do because they created an artificial intelligence to hold a frequency to where they can stay, and to feed that they need negative energy, which is why they work through certain bloodlines and do implement certain agendas that trap humanity. And they can't directly interfere, even though that's interfering enough. So what's happened is the opposing side of that came up with an idea, was to incarnate into the human experience and help from having the human experience from within humanity to help uplift the human consciousness to where we're not being affected by that, and we can go through an ascension type process. Now, it does get more complicated than that. I'm just trying to sort of put that in a short term.
Yeah, layman's terms, keep it nice and simple.
Yeah, but what we're seeing is multiple agendas and multiple things going on. And that's just to really simplify it. But also, it does come down to that we're all one consciousness interacting with itself, and that we come from source, we go back to it, God, whatever people want to call it. And the lower light do have their purpose, and that is affecting us to the point where we uplift our consciousness. And like Albert Einstein said, you can't solve a problem with the same level of consciousness that created it. So what do you need? You need to elevate your consciousness to rise above it. And I believe, in effect, that's what these negative influences do. And I know that this is going a bit in depth for the normal, I guess, UFO sort of people, if they're not weaned into this. But believe me, go and do research and talk to real experiences, and a lot of them will have the same information.
Yeah, and this really ties into, I guess, what Mary Rodwell says, and being that, I guess as humans, we don't have any past life memories, but these particular, I guess, star children or indigo children, crystal children, whatever, I guess, title you want to put on it, they actually do remember their past lives, and that's it ties in really well with what you're saying. They've deliberately incarnated into this body to help lift the consciousness, but to do that, they have to remember that past life, because otherwise they're going to come in like the rest of us and have no idea.
Well, there still comes a point with some people that if that doesn't happen, there is still somehow an awakening or remembrance. But we are seeing definitely with the children that there is conscious recall and they're more tapped in. And it's because those before them have been part of this conscious grid here to elevate it so very high frequencies can come in, which are these new children. So it's been paving the way for that, and they're operating different as well. in their brain. So some could say it's disabilities with Asperger's and ADHD and all these different things, but really, and there's a lot more than what I just mentioned, but what's happening is they're operating on a different wavelength, and we perceive it as a disability, but if you get to know these children, they're highly intelligent.
So you did mention earlier about reptilians. Now, I know they've had a bit of a bad rap. I guess, have you had much experience with any reptilians, and is it justified?
To some extent, yes. There was one experience years ago where I was taken, and these reptilians told me that they're breaking up into factions because they cannot spiritually evolve, or even technologically. They've peaked, and they've peaked for thousands of years because of their intention. So that wasn't a too bad of an experience, but the other experiences have not been good, to say. Yeah. So
Okay.
there's lots of different things that they can do, and a lot of it's through psychic warfare or projection, trying to put you and encase you in negative thought forms and energies. And they usually do this to people that have high energy to stop them doing what they're doing, or to block them, to scare the crap out of them, just so they don't pursue this any further. I know a lot of researchers behind the scenes in the UFO community that privately have told me similar stories where they never had an experience, they've had an interest in this field, and then they've had an experience with a grey or reptilian, and it wasn't good at all. And so there is truth to that, but it's like everything. I don't think everything's good, everything's bad. It just is what it is, depending on that individual's perception and consciousness and intention of how they live their life and what their passion is.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, if you are, I guess, either your consciousness or physically you're taken, it's going to be pretty terrifying, and especially if you were to see, something like not that I've ever seen one, but if you were to, what I'd imagine a reptilian would look like would be pretty terrifying. I think it'd be quite an awful experience.
Yeah, well, the worst one I had an experience with was probably 3.5 foot tall grey Draco. So it had the body of a grey, but it had big yellow eyes with the black vertical slit pupil, and it had yellowish, brownish, green skin, scales all over it. And I've seen different types of Draco reptilians, and I've had other negative experiences, but this thing took the cake. And I felt the worst emotion I've ever experienced during that experience. And as soon as I had love, and compassion and thinking, how could this thing exist in that state? It looked like how I would have at the start of that interaction, and it turned into a mist type substance, and dissolved.
And do you think that's because of the frequency you were putting out of, love, good?
It just couldn't work with it anymore. It scared the crap out of me, and that's what it was feeding on to stay there. And as soon as I flipped that around, it lost a connection. But that's the thing, is that there are, I've got scoop marks, I've got cuts on me, I've got stuff from government projects that I've been taken to, facilities where they've done damage to my body, and it's all tied in. As crazy as this sounds, and I don't talk about this stuff much, but there is a lot of physical stuff that happens as well as non-physical stuff as well. And to live with it, I've got compassion for the people going through it, because I know what it was like for myself, and still for myself at times. So I've got a better handle on it of how unproductive this can be for your normal 3D life, if we want to call it that, with work, kids, and trying to maintain a normal life and live in a normal 3D world, if that's how we want to call it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, because I know there's obviously a lot of talk about governments being involved with working with aliens, to, I guess, probably get the acquisition of technology, that sort of thing. Do you think that does go on, that our governments do have relationships with extraterrestrials? And also, I guess, if they are, is it for benevolent purposes for humanity, do you think, or not?
It's twofold. So it is going on, but I do say government as well, but it's different than that. I've talked to people that have come forth and could show me bona fides of them being in black projects, of what they could anyway, that they were in military and they were discharged, and certain documents, and talking to them, they have similar stories to myself of what they've experienced. But what happens is anyone in black ops or with top secret clearance all think that they've got the biggest top secret clearance you can get, that I know more than what you do because my top secret clearance gave me access to more things. I believe that outside of those projects is where the real government behind the government is. That there's no oversight, there's nothing monitored, and this is where the real stuff goes on. And there is some deals that have been made with negative extraterrestrials, and there's some deals that are going on with positive ones as well. There is a lot more to this, even with the SSP program and what's going on other planetary bodies and satellites within our solar system. There is a lot of different things going on, and it's like if you get all the races on Earth and cultures, you times that by 2 or 3. That's how much you've got going on just in our solar system that is sort of mainstream known about in those projects. And there's a lot more that people don't know about, whether they're extraterrestrials or local to here or not as well. There's so much going on. So it's a very in-depth question because it is two-sided. There is both negative and positive forces working, and there is an alliance that's happening to try and bring this to light through the positive extraterrestrials and those that which we could call white hats, and those are the opposing force as well. And there's a war happening even amongst their own factions on both sides as well.
So what? I guess right now, what sort of are there any new projects you're working on at the moment, or anything, or new messages that you're keen to get out to the masses?
I've got a workshop which is already sold out, which is a CE5. We've also got workshops on the Disclosure Down Under website for a CE5 and remote healing in Sydney as well. I've got my own television series coming out on Edge of Wonder TV called Ascension Teachings, which will be based on the Shiji material. And I'm looking at re-releasing second editions of 3 or 4 books next year, as well as I've got an appearance on the Travel Channel coming up, and another documentary which was made on myself that took 5 years to bring out as well. So it's done by a professional camera crew, and there's a lot that's installed for next year to happen.
Yeah, wonderful. So it sounds like you're really busy at the moment. So just for the people at home, where can they purchase your book from, or books? Because I know you've got more than one.
I would say go to petermaxwellslattery.com or ecityaustralia.org, which I've also got, working in sync with James Gilliland. Now, don't go directly to Amazon or anywhere. They're selling my books to up to $800 to $900, which I've not endorsed. I've tried pulling them down. If they're my books and they're genuine, they'll be $5, $6, $7, $8 for an ebook, up to $20-something for a paperback. So there is first editions of my books going out for ridiculous prices again. Wait a bit of time. I'm bringing them back out as second editions. But I believe that's been done to discredit me, because it's been going on before I even pulled those books down to do second editions. And I know that other people have gone through this in the community as well. So, yeah, just go to petermaxwellslattery.com. Videos, compilations of things, a lot of talks and presentations and things of that nature are there as well. And also we've got the #1 documentary on iTunes that just came out, The Cosmic Secret, which I'm in with David Wilcock and Corey Good and James Gilliland and a host of other amazing beings as well.
Wow, mate. Well, that sounds fantastic. You're obviously still very busy, so that's great. What I do, knowing that you are so busy, I'll wrap up the interview here. But thank you so much for spending some time. It really, really is appreciated. I've had a great time listening to you speak. Now, I'm hoping anyone watching from home, whether you figured it out or not, the weather where I am right now has been horrific. It's been thundering and lightning. It's a bit pixelated because we are doing a Skype interview. So please bear with me on this one. But yeah, Peter, thank you so much for spending some time here. Yeah, thank you so much. It's been great.
It's been a pleasure, and thank you very much for having me on, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure.